What is up, IDP fans? This is Shoot the Gap. This is episode 1. It's a brand new podcast brought to you by the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. I am your host, Nate Markham. Joining me for this season-long ride of IDP excellence are 2 of the 3 co-hosts that I have on the season that, if you ask me, are as credible IDP minds as there are in the business. Below me, you'll recognize him from the Fantasy and Frames page. He is Fantasy and Frames. This is Jorge Edwards. Jorge, you excited for this new endeavor, my friend?
Dude, Nate, we've been covering us together. I've been covering here at Fantasy and Frames IDP for 3 years now. This is going to mark our 3rd year.
Yeah,
and it's about darn time we had an IDP pod dedicated year round. So I'm excited, man. I'm very excited.
And it wouldn't be IDP, and it wouldn't be as in depth and as awesome as if we couldn't have the co-host of IDP Nation. He's the I'm going to keep saying co-host of Devi IDP Grind, because Kyle is the true host of IDP Nation. We all know that. And Hollywood, there will be no firing going on here. We are a family. We love each other. But if Jorge screws up, he's gone, just so you know. Hollywood, how you doing, man?
Thanks, guys, for having me. Yeah, I was excited when this was presented to me. I was like, shoot, yeah, this will be fun. So you're kind of cutting me off at the D's with the no firing, because I like to fire people. So
I know. It's early. It's early. That can change.
You can still fire Kyle just because he's not here with us right now. So
okay, fine with that. That's good.
Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. We got 2 minutes in and Kyle's already fired. That's not with us tonight. Who will be joining us for the season is Mike Wohlert, 4for4 Fantasy, and every place else you ever look up IDP, and Mike Wohlert's name will be somewhere in there. Shit, who am I kidding? You pull up IDP and all 3 of you guys' names are everywhere, and I will gladly ride the coattails into this new endeavor. But guys, before we get started, I mean, be in episode 1, if that's what the pilot will say. Let's tell everybody a little bit about, what our plans are for the show. Hollywood, if you could just tell everybody like what you hope for people to gain out of this, what would that be?
Well, I hope they gain a lot. I hope everything we're saying and doing provides some sort of information that they can use to better their rosters, better, how they create the rosters, whether it's free agents or their drafts or whatever, in some way or form. I hope we're not just being repetitive and giving something that everybody can get. Hopefully we can give them something nobody else is giving them.
You said it perfect, though. You said you hope we're not repetitive. Jorge, how do you expect us to stand out from the rest, to be different, to not be repetitive? And, in this super saturated environment of fantasy football, maybe not so much with IDP, what's that flavor kick that we're going to deliver that's going to set us apart from the rest?
I besides not being repetitive, as I'm being repetitive right now with what was just said by Hollywood. Look, I think we're going to give you great information. We're going to give you great content. For those of us who have been reading our articles over at Fantasy and Frames, particularly the Risers and Fallers series in Dynasty for IDP, you will have noticed that we have adopted our own IDP scoring settings. So we'll be referencing that a lot, and we've already gotten a lot of positive feedback. The 5-yard rush guys over in the UK, they're going to be covering our content in terms of the IDP scoring, and all the listeners and followers to their podcasts are going to be in their listener leagues using FIF IDP scoring. So we're really excited to bring you that. But at the end of the day, folks, you can find 100 podcasts out there that listen to. What makes us different is us. We're pretty cool guys to be around. Not to toot our own horn too much, but we hope you enjoy our company. We're there for you to obviously help you win your fantasy football leagues, to win your IDP leagues there. But we're always around. You ever have any questions, we're always there to answer them. Come on the show. We'll talk shop with you, whether you're a novice or whether you're an experienced player. We're going to appeal to everybody.
Yeah, and you said that. I think the one thing that I also took away from that is the overarching welcome to anybody that wants to come in. If you've never even played IDP one time, I think that's the key. That's the key to good, I'd say, information in terms of from an IDP standpoint. Is it's easy for us to just throw out a bunch of just numbers, and statistics and acronyms that honestly don't really mean much to everybody. If you can, we know the, give a man a fishing pole and he'll get bored of it and just go to Chick-fil-A. We know how that goes, whatever the age.
That's how that expression goes. Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly how it is. But that's, that's kind of what we're hoping to do. And I guess even before we get going, maybe everybody doesn't know you two. I mean, I'm sure they have no clue who I am, but Hollywood, tell anybody listening a little bit about yourself, where they can find your work, why Kyle's better, things like that nature.
Oh, Lord. First of all, Kyle only wishes he could be better than me. But no, I mentioned to Kyle, we do the IDP Nation podcast. I also do a Devi IDP Grind podcast, which is for college and IDP Devi campus to Canton. So if you like defense on that side, that podcast is dedicated to that. And then we have the IDP Nation page with the articles and all of our podcasts, guest appearances, everything. So you can check us out there. And then, I'm on Twitter. I'm on. I have the IDP Nation Facebook page. I'm around everywhere. I'm not too hard to find. So,
no, I can usually find you on a stream, drinking some ice cold Budweisers with me as we discuss all things non-football and football. As Jorge and I have had many of those nights drinking, talking other things besides football, but we're going to talk some football. And before we do so, Jorge, if people don't know where to find you, what you're doing, what you're getting into, spill it.
So, I'm the creator of fantasyandframes.com. And if you head over there, we have a lot of information from redraft info to Dynasty to IDP. Obviously, we're talking that. And so our Dynasty podcast, Dynasty 365, is really picking up a lot of steam heading into the NFL draft next week. Definitely recommend you subscribe, listen, and give those guys a follow over there. Brian, Tyler doing a great job. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as me, I'm just pumping out IDP content and Dynasty content. And next thing you know, we're getting into redraft season and then weekly content. We got a lot of stuff here at Fantasy and Frames, and we're really covering the board. And like Nate mentioned earlier, whether you're a new person to fantasy football, whether you've been playing for a long time, we're going to make sure that everybody gets something out of this, so that no one group is going to be left out of the fun that we're having here.
Absolutely. So I guess without further ado, what we'll do is we'll jump right into the, episode 1. What we're going to talk about a little bit today, instead of getting too deep into overall rankings, and we've got so many weeks to cover that. Let's take a trip around the league. Let's take a look at some of the, the familiar faces and new places. There was a ton of movement this offseason. One of the things I think that makes the NFL as exciting as it is there is no offseason, truly. I think that goes without saying. And just the plethora of moves that were made, from trades to just overall signings. We'll touch on about 22 of them. Now we'll make it a little bit quick, so settle in. We're going to start with Arizona. Arizona, the Cardinals brought in Nick Vigil and Jeff Gladney were the two, I'd say, biggest signings from a fantasy standpoint. Jorge, Nick Vigil last year filled in for Anthony Barr pretty admirably. What do you expect for his role to be in Arizona?
So, you look at the two linebackers for Minnesota. You have Anthony Barr and you have Eric Hendricks. And so when Barr was injured, Vigil came in. He played great. He was a weekly starter in my book. You could have inserted him into your linebacker 1 or linebacker 2 spot for most scoring settings out there. He was doing you a great job. But what happened? Anthony Barr came back, and you know what Vigil saw? He saw the bench. And so now you look where he's at in Arizona. They, for the past 2 seasons, they drafted linebackers, inside linebackers. They got Isaiah Simmons from a couple of years ago. They got, why is his name?
Xavier Collins.
I forgot his name because I didn't see any production last year.
You did. Arizona forgot his name.
Exactly. So Xavier Collins there. These are the two linebackers that are supposed to be manning the inside here. And so the real question is, like, Nick Vigil, is he just trading? Is he going from one bench to another, to be honest with you, hoping that he gets some playing time? I guess he's not hoping that his teammates get hurt, but if his does get hurt, he'll have some playing time there. So yeah, it's kind of like a translational move, horizontal move there. But there's no question about it. When he's on the field, when given the opportunity, he can produce.
Yeah, and from a depth standpoint, it's always nice to have able bodies to fill in, because it's almost inevitable that there will be some type of injury or banged up or just, rest weeks. In the secondary, Jeff Gladney, who missed all of last season, some domestic assault situations. Won't get into the issue with that or anything along those lines. He's able to play this year. I didn't expect much, but when I look back and I remember in 2020 he had a successful season. I didn't know how successful 2020 was, and he had 81 tackles, 63 of which were solo, 7 tackles for a loss, 3 passes defense, and a forced fumble. Jorge, is there a chance that Jeff Gladney, and maybe especially in FIF scoring, could be a relevant play? Because I got to tell you, Marco Wilson and Jeff Gladney as the cornerbacks for Arizona should probably see a ton of action.
Yeah, so with FIF scoring, what really makes this really interesting is that we do a good job of making sure that linebackers and defensive linemen and defensive backs all can kind of score within equal ranges. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's everything is pretty comparable. So what does that mean? That means all these IDP positions have value. And so when you're looking at the defensive back position, somebody like with the metrics that you just listed there for Jeff Gladney, gets targeted, that gives you opportunities to break up a lot of passes. Passes defense points add up quickly for defensive backs there. The solo to assisted tackle ratio is always a good thing, where because solo tackles, for those who don't know, normally count for more points than assisted tackles. The TFLs are there. He gets he's really good.
Yeah.
I guess that's a summary of it all. He's really good. Definitely something, especially with the improvements a lot of these teams have made in the NFC West. You got the Rams improving with adding Allen Robinson. The 49ers, I guess they're kind of not improving with the whole Deebo Samuel.
Right.
But you got some good teams there, and you got some good teams in the NFC. So yeah, I could definitely see Gladney getting some work there.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. Arizona's going through some weird situations right now. We'll have to keep posted and see what's going to happen with Kyler, et cetera. But from one team that I would say last year I had high hopes in Arizona, Atlanta, or Hollywood. I don't know if there's a team that I look at that I think bleh as much as the Falcons, short of maybe Kyle Pitts and I was going to say Foye Oluokun. We can't even mention that anymore because he's gone. And who's going to come in and step in that role is one of your old friends in Tennessee, Rashaan Evans, who not too long ago had 111 tackles. He followed that by 96, then unfortunately 57, and by season's end, he wasn't even playing. But he's reunited with Dean Pease and Arthur Smith. Maybe there's something in that reconnection. Are you any high hopes for Rashaan Evans filling in that Falcons second linebacking core?
I wouldn't say high hopes, but I think he's going to trend back up just because, like you said, Oluokun's gone now. He's going to step in likely beside Deion Jones and be the starter on the inside because they don't really have anybody else. They have Dorian Etheridge and some other guys, but they're nothing to brag about. So I think just by pure volume, he could see an uptick. He's going to see a swing back up in his production just due to that volume. I think I like it because, like you said, the familiarity with Dean Pease and Arthur Smith, they kind of already know what he can do. I think he was a cheap option because he was a free agent. He had, like you said, his numbers had went down pretty drastically from 2019 to 21 to the point to where he lost his starting job. So, that's why Tennessee didn't keep him. He just wasn't performing the way they needed to, and they weren't going to re-sign him. So for Atlanta, I like it. It's a good, cheap option until maybe, I don't know, like you said, their roster is in such need of players. And and it's not going to be a quick fix, right? I mean, you can draft players and sign free agents, but when you're that bad, you need a lot of help. But I think it's a good, cheap option for them.
Yeah, and the only other real significant signing they brought in was Casey Hayward. Again, another reuniting scenario with DMPs from his time in Green Bay, actually. Here's the thing. Casey Hayward's not been relevant since 2017. I can't see anything necessarily changing. I mean, he's lined up opposite A.J. Terrell, so maybe that means he might get some looks and he might have an opportunity for some tackles. But I don't see Hayward as someone that I'm going to search out or even probably recommend. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, he's more of a veteran presence for them. Going to help with some of these young guys that they're fixing to bring in, I'm sure. Fantasy-wise, no, he's not somebody I'm looking to get. And I think his best days are behind him, although he did have a pretty good year last year, considering where he'd been the few years before. Not anything like his days in Green Bay, but he did see a better year last year. So I like it for them. It's a cheap option, veteran presence. So, but fantasy-wise, no, he's not somebody I'm targeting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tori.
When we're talking about the defensive back situation here, I thought a really interesting surprise re-signing was Eric Harris coming back to the strong safety position there in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons drafted Richie Grant last year, and everybody there was a lot of people saying that he was arguably one of the best safeties coming out of college that year, if not the best safety. Obviously, he was not the first. Go Javon Holland over in Miami, fins up. Anywho, the fact that they brought back Eric Harris makes you wonder what exactly does it mean for the dynasty impact of Richie Grant? Is that is Harris automatically going to get the start to go again here, or is he brought in for the mentorship role and they're going to let Richie Grant go forward? I don't know. It's an interesting signing. Because Richie Grant had all season to take that spot from Eric Harris, and Eric Harris did not let up one bit. So, for fantasy purposes, he could be a sneaky defensive back, depending on how many defensive backs you start in your fantasy leagues.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just a thought that popped in my head.
No, I like it. I think he steps in and starts. I think he's their starter. The question for me would be the two young guys that they drafted in back-to-back years, Jaylen Hawkins and Richie Grant. One of them is going to have to step up and be the free safety, in my opinion. For me, I like them both, but I think Richie Grant is a much better player if he can just get in there and get it done. I think there's more upside, a higher ceiling with him. But I think one of those has definitely got to step in there with Harris.
And you can't even forget, they also went out and signed Dean Marlowe from the Lions. So they added another piece of safety depth. And not that Marlowe should play a ton. He only saw 9 starts last year. But 67 total tackles, nothing to sneeze at. Again, this is an Atlanta secondary that has been just, absolutely crushed by injury over the last 2-3 years. Every year it seems like Atlanta goes through 4 or 5 different secondary pieces. We've spent more time on Atlanta than we ever should have. So let's get the hell out of there. That's the most anybody's going to talk about Atlanta and fantasy outside of tight end only conversations.
Hey,
Kyle Pitts.
We got a question here from David Ibrahim, the owner and creator of Fantasy Go or Connect Go now. Has Stephon Gilmore's stock increased with his move to Indy? You got Kenny Moore in the secondary. You got Stephon Gilmore in the secondary. What are your thoughts there in terms of cornerback play? Are people going to be testing Gilmore?
Yeah, any more than what I think that they're going to probably have to test him a little bit more because in New England, they had what J.C. Jackson was a good even split. So it was like, I don't think that they're going to have as much of a depth in terms of who's on the other side, right? Because they traded Rock Ya-Sin,
right,
and who was nothing anyway. Honestly, I hate to say it like that, but
and then Moore is more of a slot corner.
Kenny Moore slot, yeah.
So I guess by default they're going to have to. Yeah, I agree with you right there. That's a good point.
Yeah, but again, Stephon Gilmore. It's the hardest thing for me to transition to, is to doing the cornerback value on these different scoring formats because so many of them are dependent, a lot of splash play dependence which is hard to predict and project. But, the talent always has a tendency to rise up a little bit. Kind of like, the talent that came over in Baltimore, Marcus Williams. Baltimore, it was the perfect. Here's my 2 cents. Prior to going into this year, had you known that Marcus Williams was coming over to Baltimore with that single high safety approach that they play, Marcus Williams would be the perfect fit. Probably since Ed Reed, they haven't had someone that's capable of being in that type of role. What happens? Mike McDonald comes in, and we have no clue what type of defense they're going to run necessarily. So I'm a little not concerned, but I don't know what to think about Marcus Williams this year. And I'm going to ask you two, do either one of you guys have strong feelings or a push towards Marcus Williams to be higher than he was previously in New Orleans? Or is it kind of a lateral move in production?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm looking at what they've got rostered right now currently at safety, and
it's Chuck Clark and Marcus Williams. So they have Chuck Clark there.
Yeah, they've got a Darius Washington who they drafted last year, younger guy. Geno Stone from a couple years ago. I mean, Williams is going to get an opportunity. I mean, especially if they wanted to do, like some big nickel 3 safety stuff. I think he's definitely in there.
I think good.
I just don't think he's beating out Clark. And I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to do too. This is interesting for sure.
Yeah, I think this indirectly is a Patrick Queen question, and and it just follow me through the steps here. But strong safeties. What are we seeing strong safeties used as more nowadays? As hybrid linebackers coming up closer to the line of scrimmage, trying to stop the running play, sniff that out, yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. Insert, right. Anyhow. Patrick Queen, it's no mystery that I'm not the biggest fan of his missed tackle rate last year, despite his 3-week window where he was on point, hitting all his tackles, is something to be concerned of. When they have their inside linebacker being better at pass rushing, that kind of gives me a little bit of concern there. So if they don't do anything to really solidify in the draft this inside linebacking spot for Baltimore, I could definitely see Marcus Williams having a lot more fantasy impact in Baltimore if they bring him closer to the line of scrimmage. If they do address it in the draft, then maybe not as much. But like I said, it's all Patrick Queen dependent, inside linebacker dependent.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we're going to have a lot of conversations about Patrick Queen this year because they don't, like you said, they don't much in the way of linebackers that's going to fight. I mean, Josh Bynes and Tyus Bowser are the only 2 real threats right now, and I don't think they're threats for playing time loss. But the draft is going to change. I mean, there's still so much to be had. This is just the surface which we're doing, which is good because you got to start somewhere. And I can tell you the Carolina Panthers on the offseason started to replenish that defense a little bit in pieces that they were, I don't want to say lacking because I loved Carolina's defense prior, but they brought in Matt Ioannidis. Jorge, you're a Washington general commander, whatever the hell they're called. I'm sorry. It's hard for me. I have to get used to it. And then Damian Wilson and Corey Littleton. I'm sorry, Hollywood, you're not happy. You don't like Corey Littleton, right? I'm not offending you by being grossed out, right?
No.
Oh,
yeah, he's not good at all.
Yeah, it's so. I guess my question with that, and we'll jump back into the waters of Buffalo here after this one, but with Damian Wilson, here's recent breaking news. I guess it happened a little bit ago. He was recently arrested for drunk and disorderly. So there's a potential fine coming down for Damian Wilson. Don't know how many games he may miss. So just keep that in mind. He's a starting Mike. He's coming off a 106 tackle season, 5 quarterback hits, 5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 5 PDs. If he misses time, do you think Corey Littleton steps into that role, Hollywood?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they don't have a whole lot else behind that.
Right.
I'm looking at the roster. I mean, it's super thin. And the thing of it is, I don't like either one of these guys, Wilson or Littleton. Like you said, he got in a little trouble, so he's probably going to see, I would imagine, a game or two at least, or more, depending on whatever happens. But, he wasn't very good in Kansas City either. So, and then to bring in Littleton, who I get it because he's veteran, been around. He's had some good games, but if Wilson's the starter and he's going to be out, then I would expect Corey Littleton to step in. And I don't know that you're getting any better there. Now, maybe one of these or either of these will help Shaq Thompson because he needs some help there. But as far as them themselves, they're interchangeable to me, and I don't care about either one of them.
Yeah. Jorge, you might be able to tell us a little bit more about Matt Ioannidis. He actually steps in, should be lined up next to Derek Brown, which is a huge push in the center. I mean, Carolina's run D should be excellent. They should get pressure. That should open up, passing lanes, running lanes, rushing lanes, blitzing lanes for Brian Burns, etc. Do you think Ioannidis is even fantasy relevant in FIF scoring?
No, I don't. To be honest with you, I just think defensive tackles, are rare to be these elite defensive linemen that do a great job for fantasy purposes. You get the rare exceptions. You get the Aaron Donalds. You get the DeForest Buckners. I just don't think that Ioannidis fits into that category for fantasy purposes.
I don't either. Sorry to give you the crap question of is he even good?
No, he's not a commander.
He's not a commander
anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure he's disappointed. Oh no!
Yeah,
Carolina was supposed to be a playoff team if Hollywood and I had anything to say about last year. I think they started off high. We Sam looked great and then tanked, but whatever. I'll tell you, a team I jumped over and we have to circle back to is possibly. I'm going to say this, and I want both of your opinions. I don't know how in the hell or what role Von Miller is going to have, but I am so impressed by his response to what position are you going to play. And he said in a press conference, "Hi, I'm Von Miller. I play defense. Wherever you want me, I play defense." Unfortunately, he's also subject to a revenge porn lawsuit right now.
Really? Saw that.
Yeah, this is like TMZ.
I just saw that.
Wow.
If you're just
IDP means TMZ.
Exactly. This is I did a lot of research and found out I was like, oh, so he released, I guess, private videos to quote unquote celebrities. Don't know what the video consists of, but the female, his ex-girlfriend, I guess, is pressing charges, and he will have to deal with that. I don't know what that means, but where do you guys? I mean, Von Miller, obviously, we know one of the best edge rushers in the history of the game, but Hollywood, let me ask you. I'll start there, or no, I tell you what, Jorge, let me ask you.
Sure.
What role is he? He's going from a traditional 3-4. They're gonna do like a 4-3. He's gonna be on hand in the dirt.
Right.
What do you think?
So if memory serves me correctly, Jerry Hughes is no longer with Buffalo. He wasn't picked up, or his contract expired this year.
Correct.
So my original thought is like, okay, this is the Jerry Hughes replacement. He's just going to be somebody who's going to be lining up on the edge, and there you go. If he is, one of those defensive ends whose, hand goes in the dirt, like you said, that gives me a little bit of some pause there, because I think Von Miller is much better when he's vertical on 2 feet and has the free reign and has the athleticism to get all over the field, whether it's in the backfield or go laterally and make tackles there in the running game. You're breaking is very concerning for all parties involved here. So I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it. You look at Buffalo though, and I think we can all say that Buffalo defensive line is very good. They were very good last year, but it's not because one player was a standout that kind of carried the load for everybody else. Like the rotations and bringing in people and keeping the line fresh and keeping it going. That was Buffalo's bread and butter. Now you bring in Von Miller. Does that change? Does now the defense shift towards him being the focal point? Does that make a Gregory Rousseau more valuable in fantasy? That who knows? But it is interesting to see what's going to happen with all these developments that we just discussed.
Hollywood, you in agreement? You think this is actually a down momentum for Von Miller if he has to play in that more traditional 4-2 type defensive end role?
No, I kind of don't in a way. I like what like you said, I'm a football, I play defense, right? So if he can keep that mentality and they can use him that way, I think he's set up to have a good year. I mean, you've got the young guys, you've got Russo and Oliver and Boogie Basham, all these guys, AJ Epineza. So I think they've brought him in to be that veteran leader, kind of like Mario Addison was, but I think he's way better than Addison, right? If you're asking him to dominate every game all year long, I don't know that you're going to get that out of him. But you put him in the right spot at the right times, he's gonna have some huge games, and I think he's worth having on your fantasy rosters. I think he's going to have some games where he just eats and chunks, and maybe they give him a rest or two along the way, kind of keep him fresh. But the leadership for those young guys, I think, is going to be the most important thing. And I think maybe those young guys kind of energizes him a little bit.
I love that point for that. The what is he going to do for others? Because I love the high motor guys, and that's what Epinesa and even Gregory Rousseau are. Sometimes high motor gets lost in translation and doesn't see production. But now when they have to focus their efforts to Von Miller, I think that we'll see, maybe 7 to 8 sacks out of both of those two guys. Overall, Buffalo's just a terribly dangerous team again. Of course, the AFC as a whole is completely stacked. The NFC, not so much. And one of those teams that's not so stacked is the Chicago Bears. And I'm sorry, all Bears fans. When I said Atlanta looks miserable, Chicago's not too far behind. I hope everything for Justin Fields to be successful. But they did bring in 2 defensive, I'd say, replacements or kind of fill-ins that might have significant fantasy appeal. Kadeem Muhammad comes over from Indy. He's reunited with Matt Eberflus, and he had 25 starts with Indy. Or in that time, he had 124 tackles, 11 sacks, 22 tackles for a loss. The snap share went up increasingly: 42%, 47%, 56%, 73%. Jorge, over under, if I had to give you a game of 9 sacks for Muhammad this year.
I mean, that wouldn't be too far off his pace. I mean, he had 6 sacks last year. He played a full season. What really impressed me about Muhammad, and he blew any Bears defenders last year out of the water, the quarterback hits. He's getting to the quarterback. He's getting to the pressure. He had 13 quarterback hits for Indianapolis. He was second on the team with hits. No other Bears defensive lineman last year had over 9. So he definitely has an opportunity here. And we were discussing before, the show. Obviously, they lose Khalil Mack. That's a big void to fill. Shifting from defensive end to outside linebacker, assuming that they maintain the 3-4 system now with Eberflus there as the head coach. That could be a little bit of a learning curve. Just being out, not being asked to just purely rush the passer, but being out in coverage almost to a certain degree. That's going to be interesting to see how he responds there. Nicholas Morrow, on the other hand, this is an interesting signing. He got buried in the depth chart, over there in Las Vegas. Now he's with the Bears. The Bears don't resign Danny Trevathan, which, by the way, the fact that Danny Trevathan, who was, a stud in Denver during the Peyton Manning era, was still on the NFL team starting at inside linebacker, is amazing. It's an amazing story when he was to still be fantasy, and to a certain degree, he was fantasy relevant. Again, depending on how many linebacking spots you have or IDP spots you have, he was definitely super reliable, tried and true. He will be missed. That being said, you bring in Nicholas Morrow over there. Is he the 1B to Roquan Smith? No, I don't think so. This is definitely Roquan Smith's inside linebacking core, just linebacking core in general. Can he have any fantasy relevance? Potentially. Potentially, as if all the attention goes away from Roquan Smith, which is, call me crazy, but offensive coordinators might want to scheme away from other opposing teams' best defenders. And if that's the case, you can definitely see an uptick in opportunity there for Nicholas Morrow.
You're muted.
And you are muted.
Rookie mistake. I was so excited to pull up the stat that it actually could have resonated through the screen. It's such an impressive stat that I'm going to present here that I could have said it while being on mute and it still would have resonated. He missed last year with an ankle injury, of course, and then as you were saying, Jorge, just buried in that depth chart as a whole, as if he was even able to play more than what the ankle injury cost him. But let's go back 1 year before, 2020. Nicholas Morrow had 76 tackles, 60 solo, 8 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, and 9 passes defensed. Who was the only player in the NFL in 2020 to have 3 sacks and 9 passes defensed? Nicholas Morrow. Now, that is not meant to say Nicholas Morrow is a superstar stud, but a stat sheet filler in a situation where he should see the Alec Ogletree last year had what? God, he because of Trevathan being 700 total snaps. You give me 700, 800 snaps out of Nicholas Morrow if he's healthy, and we might see something similar, which is probably an LB3, maybe. I mean, I'm fine with that. I would be okay. Maybe a super sneaky cheap option. We're not getting into rankings yet. Let's not do that. But that's just something to remember. Sorry for the mute thing. Everybody listening, I'm sure you're super disappointed in me right now. Supposed to be the
he was really eager. I could see the animated feel.
Oh, yeah. So much passion in what he was saying. And
he was. If you would have heard it, you would have cried. That's how passionate
it was, yes. And I also have 75 tabs up top that I couldn't find which one StreamYard was and didn't want to X out. Not my first rodeo, but unfortunately, I still can't stay on the bull that long. But either way, I have an interesting question for you guys. With the Cleveland Browns, they made a trade and brought in Chase Winovich. Jorge, remember 2 years ago when Chase Winovich captured our hearts and looked like he was going to be the next, that quote unquote high motor guy that was going to be a worthwhile addition to that Patriots Hollywood? We might have had a conversation about that. I'm sure we probably did, but it feels like Chase Winovich's name was way too heavily mentioned. Here's a question. With an immediate fill-in for the other end, they've needed production from the other side because Jadeveon Clowney was there for run defense. He wasn't a pass rusher. I think we all kind of knew that, as athletically gifted as he is. Chase Winovich is he gonna step in and actually have a role significantly, or is that Stephen Weatherly they're gonna split snaps? Hollywood, what do you think?
I think they could split some snaps, and they've got Stephen Weatherly now, who come over from Minnesota. They've got Isaac Rochelle, who come over from the Chargers. The last I saw, Clowney was reportedly going to sign back with Cleveland.
I haven't heard yet.
Clearly, Garrett's the monster, right? He's the one that you're trying to build around, and everybody's going to focus on. Mm-hmm. Winovich, I don't know what happened in New England, because I was one of those guys. I thought, oh yeah, here we go. This is happening, and for whatever reason, it didn't. But yeah, I think he could have a good role of some sorts in Cleveland. I think Cleveland kind of wants that, because I don't think you want Clowney playing every single snap anyway, right? If you can kind of get a rotation with those maybe of some kind, I could see that, yeah.
You know what happened in New England? Matt Judon going crazy all over the football field.
Oh, boy, did he.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Yeah, that made him expendable. And, granted, and it was a great trade because Mac Wilson fills in. They lost Juwan Bentley amongst other pieces at linebacker. It's weird that you see a good trade like that happen where it's like, hey, Cleveland, you need defensive line depth. Here's a piece. We need linebacking depth. Fits in. Both were, I wouldn't say like heralded draft picks or.
But you also got a few other pieces in New England too. Josh Uche and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They've got some younger pieces that can be that young guy,
Mm-hmm.
even with Judon. So I'm like you. I think it made him expendable and just made sense.
I like Josh Uche a lot. I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Let's get out of there. Let's talk to Denver. Let's talk, man, Denver. You want to talk about an offseason that was just filled on both sides of the ball with the most exciting. If you're a Denver Broncos fan, you have to have been in love with this offseason. Obviously, we know the offensive pieces, but defensively speaking, they bring in Randy Gregory and Alex Singleton. Say what you want about Alex Singleton. Say what you want about Randy Gregory. Randy Gregory, offseason shoulder surgery, should be recovered. But I got to think, man, Hollywood, is Gregory going to give you 15 games? Where do you see him slot in? Do we see a similar role when as healthy? Was the breakout real, I guess?
I think it was. Of course, the question is going to be, how many games do you get? Can he stay on the field? Now, exactly. With that said, I think it's funny how he kind of got to Denver. They made an offer. Dallas kind of matched it. He was ready to stay in Dallas, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's in Denver. And turns out it was over some wording in the contract about the drug testing policy and stuff like that. So knowing his background, it makes sense to go to Denver, right? As far as on the field, I have always loved Randy Gregory. He is a phenomenal talent, superstar. Again, being on the field's the thing. So last year, yeah, I think that is what you can see from him because back in 2018, he had 6 sacks too. And he only made 1 start that year. So the talent is there. They need the help. And I think a change of scenery does players good sometimes, right? If you feel good, you're playing good. I like it for them. It's a need for them that they had to feel. Yeah. And I think playing opposite of Bradley Chubb will be huge. I think that'll be a huge for him. They're going to have to figure out what they're doing with those linebackers. But as far as that pass rush, that's a pretty good pass rush with Gregory and Chubb.
Yeah, everybody that's played opposite Chubb, now granted, it's been Von Miller. Usually the 2 feet off each other pretty well. Jorge, I won't go too far in depth on Alex Singleton because I don't know, and maybe you can shed some light if you think, or either one of you two, Alex Singleton or Baron Browning. Is it a snap share? Is someone going to take the role? I don't know if I believe enough in either one of them to take that significant role. Do one of you two feel otherwise?
So I'll tell you who's going to lose the role. The person who has the highest missed tackle rate. You look at Alex Singleton last year with Philadelphia, total tackle rate of 19%, solo tackle rate 11.3%, missed tackle rate almost 13%.
Woof.
When your missed tackle rate is higher than your solo tackle rate, that's not a good sign. What does that tell me with having a total tackle rate of 19%? He was just getting volume. And now you're saying the same thing. Brendan Browning, is he going to cut into any of that? Potentially. Singleton just needs to learn not to miss. He needs to learn to hit his guy. He does that, he'll have that position locked up. But right now, it's anyone's guess. Training camp reports and mini camp reports are really going to do a lot of eye-opening when it comes to this situation here.
Yeah, exactly. Because there will be many people that see 94, solo out of Alex Singleton. They see 130 total tackles nearly, and they're going to go, whoa, yes, I want everything to do with that. And then they don't read the context of, like you said, how you come about getting to some of those numbers. No offense to Zach Cunningham, but he was kind of in the same situation. Got a huge amount of tackles and, kind of became a little exploited. And then, of course, now we've seen is he with you, Hollywood, in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, he's in Tennessee. Yep. He's actually played well enough this year. Was another reason that Evans was made expendable.
Yeah, that's true.
So
again, change of scenery, change of just scheme, not being on a team that's going to lose 15 games probably might motivate you a little bit more, assuming the Titans don't lose 15
games. You would
think,
yeah.
I mean, I'm motivated by being on with you two, and if I, makes me passionate. unfortunately,
Yeah, so passionate you forget to unmute yourself.
I do. I lose. makes me so passionate that we have to talk about the Detroit Lions moves, which honestly, there doesn't take much. I mean, realistically, the biggest moves they made were they brought in Jared Davis from the Jets again, and Desean Elliott. And so, speaking of that, Desean Elliott, if you're listening, happy birthday. It's his 25th birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, awesome.
Happy birthday, Desean. Hope your recovery is doing well. Last year, he tore his pec and his bicep, missed the season. But if we go back to 2020, in 16 games, he had 80 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, 5 QB hits, 4 passes defense, and 2 forced fumbles. That is significant, production from a safety. You guys, do you worry? I mean, at all? I mean, is the secondary in Detroit a great place for fantasy production? What are we thinking?
So I will still say that I am a Tracy Walker truther, even though he plays free safety. He had a horrible missed tackle rate, aka a high missed tackle rate when playing closer to the line of scrimmage, playing against the run. When playing in coverage, though, his missed tackle rate was negligible. So when he's asked to actually do his job, which is playing coverage, he makes all the tackles there. What's happening against Detroit? The teams are just going to be dominating against Detroit. They have been for years. That's why Tracy Walker has seen such opportunity. I don't really see a lot happening there. You mentioned going back to Jared Davis. I believe they drafted Jared Davis, and he just never really panned out. They let him go to the Jets. He played so poorly that the Jets didn't want him back, and now he's back with Detroit for some reason. I don't know what to make of it there. You know what that tells me? That tells me that Tracy Walker's still going to have some fantasy relevance in that secondary. Jeff Okudah, we forgot about him. I won't forget about this last year. He made some bad play, and his coach is ripping him on the sidelines. And then at the end of the game, you find out he tore his ACL. I'm like, oh man, he got his ass reamed to him, and he got a torn ACL for the year. So, I'm not really seeing a lot of upside in the secondary outside of Tracy Walker.
No, hopefully maybe the addition of, I'm going to say Kayvon Thibodeau is who they take at number 2, but there's reason for argument. I would say it might help them out just a little bit, but Detroit still is a work in progress. We'll clearly a long way to go. But
if for some reason Sucksonville screws this up,
and doesn't take
and they don't take Hutchinson, Detroit cannot run fast enough to the podium to turn that card in.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know how Jacksonville would screw that up. I can't envision a situation where the moves they've made so far in the offseason to fill the gaps that they've had across the offensive line, even obviously with the Aluakon, which we'll get to. I don't want to say I have high hopes for Jacksonville, but I have higher hopes than I did going into last season, of course. But before we talk about them, go ahead.
Okay, so are we talking, when you say you don't have high hopes for Jacksonville, do you mean for real football, or do you mean for the IDP fantasy aspect of it? Because or just fantasy aspect in general, because you look at the moves that Jacksonville made, at least they can play in some garbage time now.
I mean real football, not fantasy wise. There's a few people I'm impressed, and we'll get to them real quick. Let's just knock out the Colts, because the Colts, honestly, again, I think their front office makes smart moves. I think the trade for Yannick Ngakoue was a very smart move personally, because I think what it does is, you really need someone opposite Kwity Paye. We saw Kwity Paye really start to make strides towards the end of the season, or as the season progressed. But I mean, you guys, what do you think? I mean, here's Yannick. He's coming off. Is it Yannick or Unique? I've heard both. Doesn't really matter, I guess.
I call him Yannick.
I heard it was Yannick. In fact, my coworker went to the same high school as Yannick Ngakoue.
Oh, well, there you go.
And is friends with him.
Sure.
To which I'm trying to get him onto our pod somehow, some way.
Awesome.
But here's the question about Ngakoue. Is he a product of Max Crosby? Or I would say yes. In Indianapolis, Kwity Paye is not Max Crosby. I understand Ngakoue got 23 quarterback hits and had 10 sacks, and that is great. And for fantasy purposes, that'll do you well as a DL2, DL3. Fine. the real question is, can we expect that out of him in Indianapolis, lining up opposite Kwity Paye, or is he going to get the attention because he's the more experienced player?
I don't know if you can give him that much attention because you have DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart in the middle.
Right. I think he gets the sacks. Because looking back over his career, that's where he's been, an 8 to 10 guy, 8, 12, 9.5, 8, 8, 5, 3, and then back to 10. Well, actually, that 5-3 was the 8 because he split time with Minnesota and Baltimore. So 8 to 10, pencil it in. That's what he's going to give you. Like Nate said, with DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, and then you got the young guy Kwity Paye, and let's not forget who's playing behind him too. That makes a big difference when you got the maniac back there running around like a freaking lunatic.
Exactly.
He didn't have that with the Raiders. He didn't necessarily have that in some of his other stops. Jacksonville maybe, but nowhere near as good as what not Rogue One, but Darius Leonard is. So for me, you're getting those 8 to 10. You book it. It's solid. He's going to have a couple boom bust games. I think that's where he is, and that's where he's going to stay. I don't think he goes up or down, but I think you can pencil him in for that.
Yeah, the defense as a whole, like I said, if you start along the line with the aforementioned Kwity Paye and the rest of the group, I don't need to read off every single person on the Colts, but you get into the secondary, and they added Stephon Gilmore, which from an IDP standpoint, as Dave Ibrahim earlier asked, what do we expect out of that? And I looked and remembered also they brought in Brandon Faxon, and he came over from the Raiders, he's not a great corner. So I think that probably answers that question a little bit. I think that they'll be able to attack him more so than Kenny Moore, who will be in the slot. So roundabout way of answering Dave's question is I just had to get to the page that told me who the hell's on their team. Then I go, oh yeah, that's right. They don't have another person on the other side necessarily, but they do have Kari Willis and Julian Blackman in the secondary and at safety. I love the Colts defense. I think they're one of my, we'll get to another couple teams here in just a few, but one of my favorite defenses to watch this season. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you talk about Darius Leonard this, Darius Leonard that. Bobby Okereke, coming into his own. He led the team in solo tackles last year. It's becoming. I know this may be sacrilegious for some, but it's trending in the direction of a 1A, 1B situation there in the linebacking core. For Indianapolis, which is great for their defense, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you imagine that. It's moving on to Hollywood, as you call them, Sucksonville. I will call them Jacksonville because I'm nice to all fans of all teams. They did bring in, last year's tackle leader in Foye Oluokun, St. Louis native. Easiest question I can ask is, does the move impact his overall fantasy outlook whatsoever to you?
I don't think it does. I mean, I really don't think it does at all. I think what you saw last year is what you're going to get this year. A little bit different from a veteran quarterback, with Matt Ryan, and they still couldn't get it done, right? And now you're going to basically a rookie new guy with Trevor Lawrence, so there's going to be mistakes made there. Plus, Jacksonville, they don't have the best roster overall, right? So there's a reason they're picking in the top 5. There's a reason they're picking number 1. So for him specifically, I don't think it changes anything. I want to say it would be an uptick for him a little bit, but geez, how the hell do you uptick over what he did last year, right? I mean,
exactly.
I don't know that you can honestly say there'll be an uptick because I don't know that you can do that with the way he played it. But I think he'll be close to that. I really do.
To put it in reference, since 1987, when tackles were actually first counted as an official stat, there's only been one player in the NFL that has had 170 tackles and 3 interceptions in the same season. That player, Foye Oluokun. Now, granted, you may say, yeah, but he had the extra game, so that counts. That helps out. He had 192 tackles last year. Let's take away 15 of them and he still has 177, which is more. Take away 22 of them, he's still at the 170 threshold. Just outstanding talent. I mean, Atlanta, I think they're stupid for not.
And he did it with Deion Jones.
I mean, I'd have given up Deion Jones before I'd have given up Luakon.
Yes,
well, me too. But I'm just saying, he's going to Jacksonville. He don't have a Deion Jones.
Exactly. He doesn't. He has Shaq Quarterman and Tyrell Adams, and yeah.
You know what else he has? He has a 5.4% missed tackle rate. That is tremendous.
Yeah, exactly.
We talk about some of these linebackers.
And these missed tackle rates, my boy.
I'm telling you, I'm sorry, but if you're missing more than you're hitting, that's not a good sign. That's not
exactly.
That's not a good sign for longevity. Let me put it like that.
Absolutely. No, I think it's great. I like I do like the front four that Jacksonville has, at least to put some pressure. Usually with more pressure means more intermediate passes, which is more in the range of Luakon, but still nothing much more needs to be said about him. He'll still be a consensus top 5 linebacker. Take him. With the Chiefs, we obviously, I say we like I play for him, but the Justin Reed gets brought in. I think there's a lot of correlation people are trying to make between Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu. Not the same player, not the same scheme that they've been asked to play or same role. I think Justin Reed is a fine player. I'm not necessarily certain that I'm going to push him up. I don't think this is an upgrade over Houston. Jorge, you may feel otherwise. I think the biggest difference between the two teams is that typically if you're the Chiefs and team and you're ahead, teams are passing on you more, and it might put Justin Reed in more position for a splash play or an impact play. What am I missing anything?
No. So that there are two ways to look at this. One, let's go with what you just brought up. You look at the teams in the AFC West. You got Devontae Adams going to the Raiders. You got Russell Wilson at quarterback, elevating all the receiving core there. You got Justin Herbert and the receiving core they have there in Los Angeles. And one could make the argument, when Justin Reed was in Houston, teams were throwing all over Houston because they just were bad. And so he was a product of the volume and the opportunity he got there. Now with these improvements that all these other teams in the division have had on offense, it makes you wonder, are they going to start, abusing Kansas City in the secondary and forcing that offense for the Chiefs to kind of keep them in games? That is one narrative. But I agree with you. This could be a situation where the Chiefs maybe they overachieve on defense, and as a result, they don't see the field enough, and that volume just isn't there for Justin Reed. I kind of am erring on the former, though. I think this defense is going to be tested this year in this division.
Yeah, I worry about the division as a whole. I do.
I kind of like this Reed, though. I kind of like this. I mean, you're the Kansas City guy. Tell me I'm wrong here. So you've lost a honey badger. Sorensen's gone.
Yep. Thank God.
You're happy.
Looking at your roster, it's got to be Thornhill and Reed, right, as the starters. So is it an upgrade for Kansas City? I don't think so. But it's an upgrade for Thornhill and Reed. Huge upgrades for them. Fantasy-wise, that's huge. I mean, if you've got these guys on your roster, you're probably about ready to cut them until this offseason. Or, well, at least Thornhill. You was probably getting close to cutting him.
Yeah.
With the Badger and Sorensen going, I think that's, like Jorge said, volume-wise, I think that's a big uptick for them.
Yeah, he's definitely – I mean, Reed is not shied away from getting, significant playing time. Doesn't miss a ton. Played almost 900 snaps last year.
Right.
Play, again, like I said, sometimes from the safety, he's not the highest tackle volume safety out there, but new team, new situation. We'll see how Spags incorporates him in. And I think, like I said, the biggest thing is I think that they're just direct correlation to him and Mathieu is that he will be up in the box as much as Mathieu was, which I don't think will be the case. He stayed a lot, back in his roles for his career, but that's what we'll just monitor. We'll have to see the snap counts and see what's happening, and that could be an easy upgrade as the season progresses. The fact that we're talking about the AFC West, and as scary as it is, the next two teams, Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers made significant additions. Jorge, if I had to ask you who since 2012, who leads the league in sacks and forced fumbles?
I'm going to say it's Chandler Jones.
Ding, ding, ding. Correct. Chandler Jones does. You imagine having Max Crosby and Chandler Jones.
Oh my gosh.
And getting to face them twice a year like the Chiefs do.
It is one of those things where like you would think like one dominant player going to another team with another dominant player, that production is going to be like split in half type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that happening at all. I see this being the most awesome pass rushing tandem in the NFL this year for the in Las Vegas. This has explosive playmakers on both sides, fantasy points galore written all over it, man.
I would agree with that, but I think there's a duo in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack that's going to challenge for that too.
See,
that was the question I had for you.
See, I don't think so. My question with Bosa and Mack is, can they stay on the field?
Fair. That's a fair question.
Because Bosa's got the concussion history. Mack has had injury issues the past couple seasons.
So foot injury last year.
That's true. I'll give you that.
Give me the youth and I guess I shouldn't say Chandler Jones has the youth, but give me the production here for the Raiders. I think the Raiders are going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Yep. And don't it almost feel like those two teams almost mirrored each other in what they were trying to do this offseason? Getting that second big pass rusher or first big pass rusher, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably they could be the top rusher on each team. So,
but
sorry, Nate.
The Chargers, your
Chiefs are in trouble with what the rest of the West is doing.
Oh my God! You didn't even mention, the fact that the Chargers went out and not only brought in one of the better pass rushers in the league, they brought in arguably a top 3 corner in the league too, in J.C. Jackson. So the Chargers, if there was a team that I wanted to rattle off their entire defense, and it just gets grosser. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Jerry Tillery, Sebastian Joseph Day, who they brought in, Austin Johnson. At linebacker, Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquil, and Troy Reader might not leave leaves a little bit desired. We get that. But J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., Nasir Adderley, and Derwin James. That is, I as a Chiefs fan, I am a little scared because those two teams we just named got, and then we already talked about Denver and how much better Denver got. Everybody got better except for the Chiefs, honestly. And the Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill.
Which just blows my mind, by the way.
Hey, it's going to work out. Their drafts have been excellent. We saw that last year. Maybe this year will be the same. A team with very little draft capital, the Los Angeles Rams, might have went out, huh?
In the words of Les Snead, F them picks.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to make picks when you can bring in Bobby Wagner, because pretty much that's like a 101 pick you just got. Granted, it was helpful 8-9 years ago, but guys, it's Bobby Wagner. Do we need to say anything more? Is he how high would you guys have him as far as your overall LB? Is he your 2? Is he your 3? Is he your 4?
I'm okay with him.
He's easily there.
Yeah.
I'd go as far as saying he's still in my top 12, probably towards the lower half of the top 12, but for
Redraft, I mean linebackers overall. I think there's a case that people are saying that I think he could be like the 3rd or 4th linebacker taken overall.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I'm not talking about like LB4.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously you go past that, you're kind of playing with fire because of the age, but redraft 1 year shot. Absolutely.
Which, by the way, did anybody see on Twitter and on Facebook or follow the Rams Twitter or Facebook pages? Because the day after Bobby Wagner came on, they had a beautiful graphic saying, bye, Troy Reader. It was nice knowing you. Thank you very much. You're gone. It's like, wow, they gave him like a Hollywood exit stage left, young man.
Yeah, except he went like 5 feet away because he's with the Chargers in the same stadium.
Yeah.
he just walked out the stadium. He did the Grandpa Simpson meme where he takes his hat and puts his hat off, puts it back in. That's all he did. Oh man. I will tell you, Minnesota Vikings actually made two, I think, really, really big plays for the linebacking core or edge rush, however you want to look at that, with that 3-4, because Ed Donatell's coming in as the new defensive coordinator. So Zadarius Smith in this 3-4. I mean, what are you guys thinking as far as more of a like a lateral kind of move from Green Bay? Do you think there's an uptick in production? Do you like the scheme? Do we worry about just progression of age? Where you guys at with Zadarius Smith?
Man, if Danielle Hunter could just come back to 100%, this pass rush is
it's gonna be nasty.
It's beautiful. I like
it's gonna be so nasty.
Yeah, that's where I stand with this addition of Zadarius Smith. Jordan Hicks, though, Arizona, they said last year they're going to try and field trade offers for him. They couldn't do it. Guess what? He held on to that inside linebacking job, as we were alluding to earlier with Xavier Collins. This is the question: is he the Anthony Barr? Is he taking over Anthony Barr's spot, or is he a depth piece here for the Vikings?
I think he's better than Anthony Barr.
Oh, I agree. I hope that's the case. They brought him in here to be a starter.
Hollywood trivia question.
Okay.
Only 2 linebackers in the NFL last year had 100 tackles and 4 interceptions. Name those 2 linebackers.
Oh, Lord.
It's a trick question. It's not trick question. It's a very narrowed scope question to maybe the Minnesota Vikings defense.
So it's got to be Hicks and Kendricks, right?
That's exactly right.
That's awesome.
I mean, what a tandem in the middle. The Vikings, I think they're going to be – you want to talk about pushing all your chips in with Cousins won last year and not knowing how the health of Dalvin Cook, each year you go in. But, my gosh,
right.
they could be a very, very fun team to watch this year, especially in – I'm sorry, but the NFC North doesn't really scare me too much. I mean, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have much around him.
Sammy Watkins can only elicit so much confidence that.
Sammy Watkins! I can't wait to start having Sammy Watkins. 1,000-yard season again. He's only 8 years removed from that 1,000-yard season with Buffalo. Can't wait to see that talk. It's going to happen eventually soon. Let's go to Nolans.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus May, Hollywood, comes over from the Jets. I think that if you ask me, very successful 2020. Last year was obviously lost. Don't need to worry about that. But transition to the Saints. I think that they've obviously shown success with the safety role. Do you think that is Marcus May going to be one of those defensive back 2 or 3s that you target in your drafts?
I think he can be. Yeah. You got to stay healthy, of course, and we say that about any player, but he's had some recent injury issues. So, yeah, as long as he's healthy and looks like he's going to – wouldn't you kind of say that your boy has to be a starter there too? May and Sorensen are the starters?
I have that down, unfortunately, and then I just laugh the entire time. I
kind of do too because they got Chauncey Gardner, but I don't know. For me, I'm looking at it, and I think May and Sorensen's got to be your starters, I think, coming out the gate.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a lot of regrets about that. The problem with Sorensen is he always has the big splash plays, the big, for every shit play he does, 15 of them, he has one amazing play that negates a lot of it in some people's eyes. But whatever. Jorge, Jordan Whitehead is filling the role that Marcus May vacated in New York. Jordan Whitehead, I personally love. I've always thought he was a great fantasy safety that just needed the opportunity, and he's gotten it, obviously, ever since really stepping foot on the field. Transition over to that Robert Saleh defense, you think really going to be impactful for him this year?
Yeah. You look at, Ashton Davis last year for the Jets, and then you look at, Jordan Whitehead coming in. Whitehead obviously is going to get the preferential treatment here because, obviously he's a veteran and a free agent there. Do I think he's going to have – do I think – man, this is so hard for me to answer because I'm a huge Marcus May fan. Just what he was asked to do for this Jets team, basically be all over the field, doing everything, making every play. Do I think Jordan Whitehead can be Mr. Swiss Army knife all over the field? I don't know. I think we need to temper expectations there. And I kind of don't understand why they brought in Jordan Whitehead outside of the fact that they wanted to make a splash move because let Ashton Davis develop. Let him get some experience there. I mean, he had a good stretch last year. They basically had his comparable solo to assist tackle ratio. One just has more of a name than the other. So it's an interesting signing. But again, it's the Jets, strong safety, the linebacking core outside of why am I blanking on their names right now?
For the Jets,
yeah, CJ Mosley and anyhow, doesn't matter. The point is there's going to be opportunity there. There should be volume there, but the question is in coverage. Is he going to really be somebody that's going to be like Marcus May was in coverage? I don't know if that's the case.
No, I mean, it's pretty evident last year. If they utilize him similar, if they take his role or his ability and they push that into a role, not the square peg into the round hole type thing. He had 290 snaps in the box versus 229 at free safety for Tampa. You hope that they saw the skill set and they bring him over and they let him do the same thing, but we don't know. We have to just hope that happens. At least I do, because I like Jordan Whitehead. So that's one way to look at it. Do you like the person? Terrible fantasy analysis. Let's go to Philly. Got two linebackers coming back home, technically. Kazir White grew up near Philly. Hassan Reddick went to Temple. Both Reddick and Kazir White, I think, are capable linebackers for sure. Kazir White's safety experience in college looks to play well. It did well, at least at the NFL level so far. And he had a great season last year, 120 tackles. Hassan Reddick, he's had back-to-back double-digit sack seasons and 100-plus tackle seasons for 4 straight. Here's the downside, and you guys tell me if this is something. Let me ask you a quick question before. Hassan Reddick, before I tell you this, were you up on Hassan Reddick or were you down on Hassan Reddick with this move?
I love both of these moves. I think this is fantastic for Philadelphia. You have to be really excited here. Now, Reddick, he's going to be moving towards defensive end as opposed to playing the outside linebacker role he was playing in Carolina. So that's going to be, or the hybrid defensive end outside linebacker role he was playing in Carolina. So there is that little adjustment there. But these guys, I mean, you look at, and I just closed the tab I had just open. You look at Kaiser White, he had a career high in tackles and he played well in coverage. Reddick, I think, had like 11 sacks on the season last year in Carolina. So just production.
Hollywood, you agree with?
I'm loving the Reddick. I'm loving the Reddick thing here. People were kind of burned on him the first 3 years of his career in Arizona, right? Just never lived up to it. And then all of a sudden the light switch went on. And 12.5 in 2020. And then, of course, 11 with Carolina. If I'm Philadelphia, I'm ecstatic over this. I think this is a very good piece for them. Something they needed, right? They needed this kind of help. I think it makes their team better overall. I mean, it's got to, because they've not had this kind of piece before.
And you look to what the Philadelphia Eagles teams of the early 2000s, when they had so much success. What was their thing? Running the ball and having a good defense, and that's the tried and true recipe there for successful teams. Running the ball, which the Eagles had one of the best running, if not the best rushing attacks in the NFL on offense, and this solidifies this defense tremendously.
Here's the cold water on Hassan Reddick, unfortunately. If there's any, and this is my reason for pause, Hassan Reddick's successful at blitzing the quarterback and getting to the quarterback. Evidence in his, double-digit sack seasons in back-to-back years. The Eagles last year, in comparison, the Carolina Panthers blitzed on 33.7% of the plays. That's 192 different blitzes throughout the season. The Philadelphia Eagles, on the other hand, were dead last. Nope, next to last. Take that back. The Raiders were actually last. They blitzed on 16% of the plays. I don't think there's a direct correlation there, but I do want to think that I'm going to temper the overall sack totals if you see a blitz percentage cut in half. So, I mean, that's just, if there's cold water, that's the only thing I had to, throw on there.
And I understand that, and I'm going to counter this a little bit right here. So Arizona 2020, when he had the 12.5, right? 140 blitzes to get those 12.5 sacks. He goes to Carolina the following year, has 11 sacks, on 62 blitzes. So his blitzes were cut over half, and he still got the production. With that, I'll even go with what Jorge's been doing on that. His missed tackle rate was well over 12 the first part of his career, and it went to 6 and then 5.6 last year. So all the numbers that you want to see are trending the right way. Fewer pass rush opportunities, but the pass rush stays there. The missed tackle opportunities are coming down. So I think, if he can continue that trend, even maybe with a little less pass rush opportunity, I think he can still get you 8 to 10 sacks, and I'm okay with that.
And I'm 100% behind you on that. I think that's, an excellent way to look at it. If I'm setting my ceiling and my floor, I have a tendency to go by what the team puts you in the position to do so. And that lowers my ceiling a little bit. But I think that maybe I'm going to have to agree with both you guys is that the floor is so elevated that it's worth the risk to think that maybe, just maybe, the Eagles see what they have in their hand. Because let's be honest, maybe the reason they only blitzed 16% of the time last year is because they had a bunch of shit bags at linebacker and they weren't worth blitzing. So let's, we'll put the pieces together of this puzzle, and we'll take that and we'll move along to just touch on the last couple teams. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they've had a hole at linebacker to an extent, I'd say even with Devin Bush, but next to Devin Bush. However, they brought in Miles Jack. Miles Jack, anything as far as reason to be concerned? Do you think that his back-to-back 100-plus tackle season is going to hold true for a third season in Pittsburgh?
I don't know about that. I want to say yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking. My brain is thinking. I'm trying to see where he fits in and the production that was left open. I mean, they don't have Schobert anymore. I don't know that Bush is super. I don't think he's what everybody thought he would be to this point. Now, maybe he turns that around still. You're getting, for Jack, I think it's an upgrade. If that's hard to believe, you would think, well, he would play better in Jacksonville because of the opportunities and them being so bad. But Pittsburgh's going to get back to this.
Better.
I don't think they are either, but they're going to get back to traditional Pittsburgh. They're going to pound the rock with Najee Harris, and they're going to play defense. And if that's the case, I think I like Miles Jack. 3 out of the last 4 years, he's had 100 tackles. I think he can do that easily. Because Schobert come right in and did that. The opportunities are there, right? Because that division wants to run. Lamar Jackson in Baltimore and Cincinnati with Mixon, even with the high-powered receivers and quarterbacks, still a run and pound division. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. So the opportunities are there. So, yeah, I think he easily gets to 100 tackles again.
Nice. So Seattle, not exactly a team that is, I think, on the upward trend this year, if anything. They brought some pieces of part of the trades that they had made with Denver, where they got Shelby Harris and Uchenna Nwosu. The impact for Shelby Harris, I mean, Jorge, really is kind of limited, I'm guessing. Defensive tackle, there's not much to be made out of that. Uchenna Nwosu, though, at linebacker next to Jordan Brooks, you see any upside in that play?
I'm more excited for Cody Barton than I am Uchenna Nwosu.
Yeah.
I just think the youth there, and they played really well. He played really well as a rookie last year. I don't see Nwosu, even though he was a free agent. I don't see him holding that starting job for most of the season.
Yeah, no. I personally, it's peace, and unfortunately,
got some depth. You got to have some depth on
you. Got to have exactly, and like Tampa, last team on the list here. Tampa added depth pieces at secondary. They lost Jordan Whitehead, but they bring in Logan Ryan and Keanu Neal. It's hard for me to determine what role Keanu Neal is going to play. I think we saw I thought the potential with Dallas last year was so high. I was really excited for his opportunity as a safety when he was going to be playing heavy linebacker. And I was disappointed, to say the least. I think maybe that's just I had too high expectations. But what do you think of Logan Ryan? I think Logan Ryan's kind of he's such an enigma because
I freaking love it.
I do too. Jorge?
And I don't. Go ahead.
Look, Logan Ryan is a tackle monster.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a tackle monster since he was in Tennessee. He comes over to the Giants. Look, you look at these moves that they made in the secondary. Let's go into Keanu Neal. Keanu Neal, they experimented with him in Dallas trying to be a linebacker. He said this offseason he wants to go back to being safety. You know what these two moves scream to me? Redemption against the Rams. And so part of me wonders whether or not both of their opportunities are going to be, or their fantasy output is going to be diluted a little bit because they're basically playing the same role. They both are strong safeties coming over here. So, is this a situation where, again, one's depth, one's not? Are they going to split snaps? That concerns me for a fantasy perspective. I want the person who's playing the most snaps to play.
Well, also through this, Logan Ryan can play corner, and he can play it damn well when he needs to.
Yeah. So, you got Carlton Davis there also on the other side, who's great at pass breakups. This screams to me Rams redemption.
Yep.
Like you're not passing on us again. Cooper Kupp's not getting behind us again to lose the game.
Right.
Right here.
But this also gives them an opportunity to play some of that big nickel 3 safety set with Logan Ryan being that third guy. Exactly.
And what does that do for Sean Murphy-Bunting, though? Is he just kind of bounce around between slot and dime packages? So, yeah. Their depth is excellent. I love their depth because, like we said, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Antoine Winfield, Logan Ryan, and Keanu Neal is 6 amazing pieces that can be interchangeable on that field at any given time. But I think of the names there, at least free agent wise, Logan Ryan's the one that could be interesting to pay attention to, just to see. He always seems to be a free agent waiver wire guy, even though he doesn't deserve to be so. Always seems like
Tennessee has not been right since they let him walk away.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. And I haven't disagreed with what any of you guys said. That would lead me. And you know what? I was hoping to finish with Tennessee or with Washington for you two. But unfortunately, neither one of those two teams made any free agent signings in the offseason that really were impactful. And so with that, and an hour and 22 minutes later, we conclude the pilot episode or episode 1 of Shoot the Gap. Jorge, Hollywood, tell everybody again where they can find your work.
You can find my work over at fantasyandframes.com. You can follow me on Twitter at fantasyandframes, as well as at Jorge B. Edwards on the Twitter sphere. And we have a Facebook, YouTube pages. For YouTube, subscribe to our channel, please. Support us there. We got a TikTok. We got Instagram. We're everywhere on social media. So fund us. We're here to answer all your questions and happy to have some fun playing some fantasy football.
Hollywood.
Just let me say, this did not by any means whatsoever feel like a pilot episode. This was a well-oiled machine, and I can't imagine what it's going to be like when Mike Wallert steps in here with us.
Oh yeah,
this is going to be great. I enjoyed this. This was really fun, and hopefully, like I said in the beginning, this helps people. So, idpnation.com. That's ours now. Go check it out. It's a pod page, but there's articles. There's places you can donate or whatever you want to do. All of our podcasts are there. If it's all right with you guys, send me the link and I'll put it up on that page too. That way people that's following can check us out. But yeah, idpnation.com, IDP Nation podcast, Davey IDP Grind podcast. And then of course on Twitter at Hollywood Titan. And like I said, you can find me basically anywhere. So.
And I think I can speak for Nate saying it is great to have you part of the Fantasy and Frames family also there.
Well, appreciate it. I was tickled when you first approached me with it. I was tickled to death. I was like, wow, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, it is. I'm blessed to be surrounded by so many people that know so much more about the IDP game because as Jorge's always said, iron sharpens iron, and I learn more each day, and we'll learn more each show. And for Jorge and Hollywood, I'm Nate Markham. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Later.
I didn't mean to hurt you. Coach told me to pretend.